Hook 5. A lethal injection was minutes away, and the only thing standing between the mob boss and a body bag was a terrified maid. Vincent Romano thought he had pulled off the perfect betrayal against his cousin. He locked the doors, secured the territory, and paid off the doctor. But he didn't realize the 260-pound cleaning lady he just called a sweeting pig had a satellite phone hidden in her bra. The dead man is walking, and his revenge is going to be biblical. It is 3 a.m, the kind of hour where the city goes quiet and the darkest secrets start to breathe. Dominic Costello, the most feared man in New York, is dying slowly in his own bed, and nobody even cares. They call it a mysterious illness. Some whisper it is simply karma finally catching up to a man who built his empire on blood. But there is a twist, and you and I are going to unpack this together. Bridget, a quieter, heavy-set cleaning woman, treated like an absolute ghost by the cartel, is the only one who sees the truth. She finds the poison. Suddenly, this invisible woman holds the life of a dying king in her rough, calloused hands. Life has a funny way of making the smallest pieces on the board the most dangerous. Let us step inside the Costello estate. The Costello mansion is a monument to excess and paranoia. Imported Italian marble floors demand special soap, while the thick plaster walls hide the echoes of whispered death threats. Bridget Collins knows the ugly truth of this far better than the men who claim to own it. Right now, she pushes her heavy cleaning cart down a shadowed hallway in the West Wing. The wheels squeal a lonely sound in the dark, but nobody bothers to yell at her. The truth is, people only speak to Bridget when they need a dark red stain scrubbed out of the floorboards. She is 28, exhausted down to her bones, and carrying a weight that goes far beyond her physical size. Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry are the ones nobody else bothers to look at. In a vicious world obsessed with glittering wives and dangerously thin mistresses, Bridget does not fit the mold. She wears a dull grey uniform that pulls tight across her wide frame, her hair shoved into a tired, frizzy knot. She knows exactly what these ruthless killers see when they look at her. They see a slow, invisible shadow. They see a nobody. But here is a lesson that changes everything. Sometimes being entirely overlooked is the greatest power you can wield in a room full of monsters. These men, with loaded weapons pressed against their ribs, casually discuss drug routes and extortion rackets right over her bowed head. They assume the help does not have ears. They forget that the people who clean up their messes are the ones who know all their secrets. The soldiers lean heavily against the wallpaper, blowing thick cigar smoke into the air, barely shifting their weight to let her squeaking cart pass by. To them, Bridget is not a woman. She is barely human. She is just a piece of the furniture, part of the background noise. Then a harsh voice snaps through the smoke, ordering her to scrub the baseboards in the main study. Bridget stops and turns. It is Vincent Romano, the underboss and Dominic's own blood cousin. He is dressed in a flawless charcoal suit, his eyes burning with a greasy, unchecked arrogance that was never there before. Bridget just drops her chin, murmuring a soft apology playing the broken servant to absolute perfection. Pride will always blind a man to the silent threats standing right in front of him. Vincent does not even give her the dignity of a second glance. He turns right back to his enforcer, openly bragging that the city docks will be theirs by Thursday. He orders them to keep lying to Dominic, assuring him everything is fine, if the boss even manages to ask. The disrespect is staggering. Dominic Costello used to be a name that made grown men sweat. He was a brilliant, cold-blooded tactician who claimed the throne at 30 after his father was murdered. Those pale, grey eyes used to miss nothing. But 6 months ago, the untouchable king simply collapsed. It began with a tremor, and now he is a prisoner in his own sprawling bedroom. The doctors blame a sudden aggressive illness, but betrayal usually happens slowly from the people standing right beside you. The brutal reality of his fall is hard to digest. A man who once crushed empires cannot even lift a glass of water to his own lips. Down on her knees against the damp baseboards, Bridget watches Dr. Arthur Pendleton glide down the hall. This is the private physician raking in $5,000 a day to supposedly ease the boss's suffering. He walks with a sleek silver case, shadowed by two massive guards. Bridget twists her sponge, letting the grey water bleed into her bucket, and catches the doctor's reflection in the polished stone. Something is terribly wrong. A healer losing a patient carries a heavy sorrow. Pendleton does not look defeated at all. He looks energized. He looks like a man who has already counted his blood money. Greed rots the soul far faster than any physical disease ever could. There is a strange bounce in Pendleton's step as he leans in to whisper something to Vincent. Bridget spent years mopping up ordinary hospital rooms before taking this job. She knows the sour scent of death, and she knows the heavy shoulders of a doctor who is losing the fight. Pendleton is not fighting to save anyone. He has the smug glow of an executioner getting away with murder. Later that evening, the head housekeeper corners Bridget in the steamy laundry room. The older woman is pale and shaking, announcing that another girl just walked off the job. The maid tried to change the sheets in the master suite, and Dominic threw a glass straight at the wall, terrifying her into quitting. Fear can either break you in half, or it can be the very thing that wakes you up. Bridget methodically folds the thick Egyptian cotton towels, letting the housekeeper's frantic orders wash over her. Starting tomorrow, Bridget is assigned to the master suite. The rules are absolute. Get in, scrub the floors, and get out. Do not speak to him. Never look him in the eye. If the broken king starts raging, keep your head down and stay silent. Bridget gives a single nod, but underneath her ribs, her heart is beating a frantic rhythm. Everyone in the house is terrified of that room. Even paralyzed Dominic Costello casts a long, lethal shadow. But looking down at her worn, chapped hands, a dark spark of purpose flares to life. It is funny how danger calls to us when we have nothing left to lose. She is walking right into the lion's den, and everything is about to change. The air inside the master bedroom is thick and suffocating, wrapping around her throat the second she steps inside. It smells of sharp rubbing alcohol, lingering sandalwood, and the sour heat of a fever that refuses to break. Bridget guides her cart past the heavy oak doors, the wheels sinking into the plush Persian rug. Thick velvet curtains block out the morning sun, plunging the room into a deep, heavy gloom, and there, swallowed by a massive mahogany bed, lies the legend himself. Bridget tries to obey the rules and keep her eyes on the floor, but the pull is too strong. The man who used to own the city is a ghost. His warm olive skin has turned a sickly grey, stretched tight over a sharp, hollow jaw. Illness strips away our armor, revealing the fragile humanity we try so hard to hide. Dark, bruised circles drag down the corners of his eyes. The cartel boss is tethered to a rattling IV pole, a slow drip of clear medicine feeding directly into his tattooed forearm. He remains perfectly still as Bridget begins to work. She presses herself against the edges of the room, dusting the heavy mahogany shelves, holding her breath to avoid making a sound. It is a painful truth, but when society treats you as a burden, you master the art of becoming entirely invisible. Despite her size, she glides across the floor like smoke. Suddenly, the brass handle turns, and the heavy doors swing open. Dr. Pendleton strides into the gloom, with Vincent trailing right on his heels. Panic seizes Bridget. She instantly presses her back flat against the dark corner by the marble bathroom, holding completely still. Hidden in the deep shadows, Bridget holds her breath. Vincent asks about his cousin's condition, layering his voice with a thick, artificial concern. But underneath that fake sympathy, you can hear the raw impatience of a vulture waiting for the end. Pendleton strolls up to the bedside, his voice cool and utterly detached. He announces that the deterioration is perfectly on schedule, noting that the paralysis is creeping into the lungs. He uses the word tragedy, but the tone is dripping with arrogant victory. Vincent leans over the mattress, nervously asking if Dominic can hear them. The doctor chuckles. He taps the IV bag and promises the sedatives have erased his mind. He stands over the most lethal man in the state and calls him a vegetable. Trust is the sharpest knife we ever hand our enemies. Bridget risks a tiny glance around the edge of the wall, locking her eyes on Dominic's face. His eyelids are half shut, his gaze hollow and fixed on the dark ceiling. But beneath the fog of those heavy narcotics, she sees it. A sharp, violent twitch in his jaw. The muscles clench with a silent, screaming fury. A chill runs straight down Bridget's spine as the truth clicks into place. The king is trapped in his own body, and he can hear every single word. The doctor opens his case, drawing a clear liquid from a tiny vial into a sterile syringe. He jokes about morning pain management, injecting the poison directly into the plastic tube. Vincent mutters, asking how much longer they have to wait. Pendleton smiles a wicked grin. A few more weeks, he promises, and the heart stops. It is terrifying how easily evil hides behind a white coat. Stick with me tonight, because this is the exact moment the shadows start to talk. Bridget claps a trembling hand over her mouth, biting back a terrified scream. She is watching a slow, agonizing murder unfold right before her eyes. The doctor carelessly drops an empty glass vial into the metal wastebasket. Then, the men simply walk out, sealing the heavy doors behind them. The quiet that follows is absolutely crushing. For 5 agonizing minutes, she does not dare to breathe. She is just a maid scraping by in Queens. Getting tangled in cartel business means a one-way ticket to the bottom of the river, courtesy of Vincent. Sometimes, the hardest lesson in life is realizing that true survival often demands we ignore the desperate suffering of others. But the second her cheap rubber soles step out from the shadows, her breath catches in her chest. She locks eyes with Dominic. The old lion cannot turn his head, but those bloodshot, storm-gray eyes track her every move. They are swimming in a raw, unadulterated fury that hits her like a physical blow. The absolute agony of a king betrayed by his own blood. He cannot utter a single cry for help. He is buried alive inside his own decaying flesh, left to rot by the family he built. Bridget swallows the bitter lump of fear in her throat, her knuckles turning bone white as she grips her dusting cloth. She approaches the ruined Mafia boss, her voice trembling like a dying leaf. She whispers that she is only here to empty the trash. Crouching down beside that fateful metal bin, let us pause for a second and look at the brutal reality of what she uncovers. Her knees pop painfully as she digs through the medical waste. Her gloved fingers finally scrape against cold glass, the tiny amber vial left behind by that wretched doctor. Later, wrapped in the suffocating silence of her cramped apartment, the harsh blue glare of her laptop screen illuminates her exhausted face. She peels back the torn label to read the faded ink, thallium sulfate. She types it in, and the color drains right out of her cheeks. This is not some miracle cure. It is an old, vicious heavy metal. We are talking about highly toxic rat poison. It is a harsh lesson, really. Most lethal betrayals never come with a loud warning. They just quietly slip into our daily routine disguised as care. The cruelty of this scheme goes much deeper. This poison is entirely tasteless and odorless. It systematically shreds the brain and perfectly mimics a terminal nerve disease. Adding to the horror, the second drug is a heavy-duty surgical paralytic. Dr. Pendleton is not treating the weary boss at all. He is medically torturing him, freezing his vocal cords so the Don cannot fight back. Bridget leans back in her rickety chair, listening to the old wood groan. She is holding a guaranteed death warrant in her shaking palm. She whispers into the dark, begging for an answer. Going to the police would be a fatal mistake. The cartel would erase her from existence before sunrise. You quickly learn that in a broken world, doing the right thing often demands everything you have. It is a sickening reality, but Dominic's traitorous cousin Vincent already owns half the city police. If she tries to warn the loyal mob captains, they will demand hard proof she simply does not possess, and Vincent will silence her forever. There is truly only one man left on Earth who can fix this nightmare, and he is currently a paralyzed ghost trapped in his own bed. Fast forward to the next morning. A bitter, heavy rain beats against the windows, drowning out the silence of the Costello mansion. Bridget pushes her rusted cleaning cart into the master suite at exactly 10 o'clock. She has studied their routines perfectly. The corrupt doctor is gone until noon, and Vincent is away making deals with the Russians. She steps inside and throws the heavy iron lock on the massive oak doors. That heavy lock clicks shut, and in the suffocating quiet of the room, it rings out like a solitary sniper shot. Dominic lies there exactly as he did yesterday, his chest barely rising, wheezing like a ruined engine. Right above his graying head, the medical bag is slowly dripping pure betrayal straight into his helpless veins. Bridget marches directly toward that pole. Her hands are sweating, trembling violently, but she forces her fingers to clamp that wretched tube shut. The toxic rhythm finally stops. She pulls out a pair of sterilized scissors she smuggled in her coat and severs the entire line. Just like that, Dominic's storm gray eyes snap violently open. It is a profound reminder that sometimes all it takes to wake a sleeping lion is one small, truly terrifying act of everyday courage. Dominic stares at her, his icy gray eyes fighting through the suffocating fog of the paralyzing drugs. He forces out a whisper, grinding like dry leaves on concrete, demanding to know who she is. It is the first time Bridget has heard the Don speak. He is heartbreakingly weak, yet that terrifying underworld energy still lingers. Her heart slams against her ribs, but she roots her feet to the floor and tells him she is stopping the drip. He tries to roar for his guards, threatening to end her, but it surfaces as a pathetic gasp. She tells him to save his breath. You see, sometimes in life, true power isn't about the empire you build. It is about who chooses to stand by your bed when the crown finally falls. She leans in and shatters his reality. His guards are downstairs playing poker. His own cousin is carving up his territory for the Russians. And that trusted doctor? He is the one digging the grave. Dominic's eyes stretch wide as the cold spark of a blood vendetta ignites. Bridget holds the empty amber vial to the dim bedside lamp. She lays out the brutal math. It is rat poison mixed with surgical paralytics. He is not fading from a tragic illness. His family is slowly murdering him. The silence turns heavy, pressing down like deep water. Let's sit with this together. The deepest wounds are always inflicted by the people we trust to hold the knife. Dominic stares at the tiny glass, then locks his gaze onto her face. For the first time, the ruthless Don truly sees her. He takes in her exhausted face, the loose strands of hair, and the overwhelming terror she is fighting to swallow. He forces his raw throat to work, asking a single agonizing question. Why risk everything for a fallen king? Bridget takes a fragile breath. She tells him she is doing it because letting him die in the dark is simply wrong. Her voice cracks as she explains she knows exactly what it feels like to be invisible, to let others decide your worth without a fight. They already treat him like a corpse. Empathy, you see, is a quiet bridge built by two broken souls finding common ground in the shadows. Dominic absorbs her honest words, closing his tired eyes before letting out a dry, bitter, and terrifying chuckle. He whispers through the shadows, demanding her real identity. She replies softly that she is just Bridget, the invisible cleaning lady. He repeats her name, his voice gathering a faint, dangerous strength. Now that the poison is cut, he drags his heavy fingers an inch across the cold silk sheets, the agonizing effort leaving him winded. He warns her that the traitors will notice the missing poison. But Bridget is 10 steps ahead, revealing a sterile bag of salt water to hook into his port. Overconfidence is often a villain's greatest weakness. That arrogant doctor would never check a cleaner's work. Dominic's grey eyes lock onto hers, suddenly burning with the pure hellfire of a resurrected man. The helpless, dying victim is officially gone. The apex predator of the underworld is fully awake. Trapped in a failing vessel, his mind remains sharp as shattered glass. He warns her that she is taking a suicidal risk. If his blood relative discovers this, death will be a luxury. Bridget doesn't blink, pulling the fake medical bag from beneath her apron. Then, the ruthless boss drops his emotional armor and tells her to call him Dom. Bridget freezes. The terrifying intimacy of a Mafia kingpin offering his nickname to a stranger sends a tremor down her spine. Trust is the rarest currency in a world built on lies, and he just handed her all he has left. Dom's eyes drill into her soul as he maps out their survival. The poison is deep in his bones. He desperately needs an antidote called Prussian blue. He explains the chemical will purge the poison from his veins. Bridget swears to find it, but she delivers a brutal condition. He must keep playing the rotting corpse, or his family will put a bullet between his eyes. Dom flashes a wicked, unhinged smile. In the shadows, he knows exactly how to play dead. He needs her to be his ghost in the halls, because to the cartel, a cleaner is just furniture. As she connects the harmless salt water, Dom's cold, tattooed fingers weakly wrap around her wrist. The physical grip is fragile, but the demonic willpower behind it anchors her to the floor. The greatest alliances are often born in our most vulnerable, desperate hours. He pulls her close, whispering a dark, heavy promise of the reckoning he will bring when he finally rises from this grave. Dominic looks up from the ruined sheets, his ragged whisper cutting through the quiet. He promises her the entire city if she gets him out of this bed, swearing anyone who made her feel invisible will cease to exist. Bridget stares down at this ruthless kingpin. She is a broke cleaner, and he is a billionaire criminal. Yet, in this twisted room, they are the only honest souls left. Gently pulling her hand from his grip, she tells him to focus on drawing breath while she handles the heavy work. Stepping into those deadly corridors, the cold truth settles over her. The invisible girl is gone. She just signed a blood pact with the devil, and you and I both know there is no turning back. The lesson here is heavy. Sometimes true survival demands that we leave our old selves behind entirely. Picture this, listeners, the bitter wind howling off the East River, cutting right through Bridget's cheap, threadbare jacket. God help her. She is actually seeing this impossible mission through to the bitter end. Getting a restricted chemical antidote on a maid's minimum wage? It should be a dead end, but Bridget was molded by the rusted, forgotten corners of Queens. She knows exactly where the rules fracture and break. On her one day off, she rides the rattling subway deep into the darkest veins of Brooklyn, where street lights are smashed out and steel bars choke every window. She marches 3 grueling blocks through the biting frost. She's terrified, completely outside her safe zone, but her heart is set. She is ready to risk her own quiet life to pull her boss from the grave. She finally halts under the sputtering, busted neon of Finch's apothecary. Inside sits Albert Finch, a disgraced shadow of a chemist who had his medical license shredded back in the 90s for pushing illegal meds. Now he operates this cramped, sour-smelling hole in the wall for the city's desperate and damned. The doorbell lets out a sad, hollow clink as she steps inside. Finch is a gaunt, unsettling man with greasy hair and heavy glasses. He barely lifts his eyes from his cluttered counter. He takes one dismissive look at Bridget reading her exhausted, ordinary posture and immediately serves her cold disrespect. Lighting a cigarette right there in the darkroom, he sneers through the smoke, sarcastically snapping that they are fresh out of diet pills. That nasty insult hits her square in the chest. It is just another daily slice of the casual cruelty people like her endure. But here is the simple truth, friends. Never let the world's cheap disrespect stop you from doing the right thing. She does not shrink back. She closes her eyes and sees Dominic's fading grey gaze, still burning with that stubborn will to live. Bridget marches right to the scratched glass and slams down a thick, heavy stack of crisp $100 bills. It is everything she has, pulled straight from under her mattress. Dropping her voice to a cold, dead serious hush, she tells him she does not want diet pills. She needs Prussian blue, and she needs a lot of it. Finch freezes cold, his cigarette hanging dead in the air. Look at this setup. You and I both know you cannot just walk into an underground joint and casually demand Prussian blue. Finch instantly drops the sarcasm, replacing it with a dark, suspicious glare. Lowering his voice to a gravelly whisper, he warns her that the feds watch this chemical like hawks. It is used strictly to flush lethal heavy metals from the blood. He squints, asking if she is trying to handle a local rat problem. But Bridget does not even blink. She just taps that tall stack of $2,000 on the dirty glass and demands absolute silence. Money always does the heavy lifting, doesn't it? Finch stares her down, takes a long drag of his smoke, and snatches the cash. He returns moments later, sliding an unmarked bottle across the counter. Finch taps the plastic, muttering there are 50 pills inside. His instructions are brutal: crush them down and mix them with liquid. He warns her the compound will stain the mouth a ghostly blue and trigger stomach cramps that feel just like swallowing shattered glass. He adds a dark caveat. If the man is already knocking on death's door, this cure might actually push him right through it. Bridget just nods, drops the bottle deep into her bag, and steps back out into the freezing rain. Her heart is hammering against her ribs. She secured the antidote, but the real madness begins now. She has to smuggle it inside the heavily armed Costello estate. Yet, her greatest pain becomes her ultimate superpower. To the flirting guards, the tired cleaning lady is completely invisible. To those armed men, she is nothing but background noise. Right at 10:15 in the morning, Bridget slips into the master suite and quietly slides the deadbolt home. The boss, Dominic, is wide awake. His sunken eyes snap to the door the second the lock clicks. He looks 100 times worse today. Now that Bridget cut off his morning dose of the paralytic poison, his shattered nervous system is absorbing the raw, agonizing blast of pain. Cold sweat drips down his pale face. Every single breath sounds like rough sandpaper dragging across wood. His throat is bone dry as he softly rasps that she actually came back. Bridget rushes to his bedside, whispering that she gave him her word. She uncovers a small mortar and pestle. The terrifying show is about to begin. Her hands tremble as she cracks open 3 capsules, grinding them down until they form a striking, bright blue powder. Dominic watches her every move through heavy eyelids. He forces out a question, asking what his corrupt doctor had to say. Bridget explains her terrifying gamble. She swapped the poisoned IV bags right before the doctor walked in, then switched them back to clean saline the second he left the room. A deadly game of musical chairs played by a maid with nerves of absolute steel. Dominic lets out a ragged, painful breath and murmurs that she is a natural. As Bridget lifts the cup to his lips, she repeats Finch's dark warning about the glass-like agony. But Dominic just flashes a dark, arrogant fire in his eyes. He has taken bullets before. He is ready. Bridget gently slides her arm beneath his neck to support his heavy, lifeless weight. His skin is freezing, slick with a sickening layer of sweat. She tips the cup, and Dominic forces the chalky, bitter blue liquid down his parched throat. His failing body instantly fights it, gagging on the poison killer, but he uses sheer, terrifying willpower to choke it all down. A split second later, a massive, violent shudder rips through his entire frame. His spine arches off the mattress in a sudden snap of pure agony, and a strangled, broken groan tears from his chest. The veins in his neck bulge like heavy ropes. Bridget totally panics, gripping his shoulders, desperately begging him to hold on. Then out of nowhere, his paralyzed hands violently jerk up from the messy sheets. His fingers dig wildly into Bridget's forearms with a brutal, bruising force. He is nowhere near full strength, but the chaotic mix of pure agony and raw adrenaline gives him a terrifying spike of power. He squeezes her arms so hard that a sharp gasp escapes her lips, yet she absolutely refuses to pull away. She leans her weight over him, acting as his anchor in the storm, whispering desperate reassurances until the violent spasm finally shatters. Dominic collapses back against the wet pillows, dragging air into his burning lungs. His lips are stained a haunting, ghostly blue. He slowly opens his eyes to see Bridget hovering over him, terrified but steadfast. He looks down at the dark red marks on her arms, and the impossible truth hits him like a freight train. Staring at his hands, he whispers that he actually moved. Bridget quickly wipes away a stray tear, letting out a shaky, relieved laugh, reminding him that the hardest part is keeping this a total secret. For the next 2 weeks, that dark bedroom transforms into a twisted, high-stakes stage play. By day, the corrupt doctor struts in, checks the rigged vitals, and arrogantly pumps poison into the line, clueless that the invisible maid flushes it away moments later. And then there is Vincent, his traitorous cousin, standing at the foot of the bed. He openly mocks the paralyzed king, bragging about stealing his empire, but Vincent has no idea the man in that bed is awake. Dominic is memorizing every single betrayal, silently plotting the most ruthless payback the city has ever seen. To pull this off, Bridget claims the brutal midnight to 4 graveyard shift. The grand mansion falls perfectly silent, and this forgotten cleaning lady becomes the sole, trusted confidant of a fallen underworld king. Dominic's recovery is agonizingly slow, vicious, and completely hidden from the light. The Prussian blue does its dark work, aggressively stripping the heavy metals from his blood. The ashen gray fades from his skin, and those terrifying tremors finally vanish. By her second week, he can pull himself upright. Late one night, sitting in the golden glow of a bedside lamp, the predator fully awakens. He looks right at Bridget, his voice steady and cold, demanding to know every single thing happening outside his door. The traitors have no idea what is coming for them. Let us step into the quiet dark together, just you and I, and watch these two broken souls. Bridget sits trembling in a worn armchair, a laundry basket clutched like a shield. She tells him the rain is freezing in Queens, her apartment a literal icebox because the heat is broken. Dominic's jaw instantly hardens. The man promises her the world, a massive, heated penthouse overlooking Central Park. But Bridget only offers a sad, knowing smile. She did not risk her life for a payout. This completely shatters his hardened reality. His voice drops into that dark, intense register, demanding to know why she saved him. Here is the truth about human nature. The deepest loyalty cannot be bought. It can only be earned through shared pain. Step into the shadows with me tonight, looking into a room where the air is thick with unspoken pain. The apex predator is awake, his dark gaze locked onto her. He asks why she would risk everything to save a monster. Bridget freezes, hands gripping the worn clothes. She looks down, crushed by the weight of a judging world. In a quiet whisper, she confesses she knows what it means to be trapped in a body people discarded. To them, he is just a corpse. To them, she is nothing but a tragic punchline. Two invisible souls, entirely written off. She just needed to prove the blind world wrong. Here is a quiet truth to carry with you. Never underestimate the people society ignores. They watch from the edges, and they see absolutely everything. The silence in that dimly lit room presses down like a heavy weight. Dominic's voice breaks it, a soft command drawing her near. Bridget hesitates, her pulse hammering against her ribs. She edges toward the bed, painfully aware of her scratchy uniform. This man's past is lined with flawless models. She feels utterly out of his league. But Dominic reaches out, perfectly steady. He does not grab her. His fingers gently wrap around her hip, palm resting against the soft curve of her waist. Bridget freezes, her breath catching. No one has ever touched her with such absolute reverence. His storm-gray eyes find hers, cutting through her insecurities, and he murmurs that the rest of the world is completely blind. Remember, true worth is often only recognized by those who know the dark. He tells her the men in his brutal underworld surround themselves with hollow illusions. But to him, she is the most real thing he has ever seen. His voice drops, confessing she holds more raw courage than his entire crew of ruthless killers. His thumb traces the rough fabric of her apron. He asks if she truly believes he looks at her and sees a joke. Pulling her closer, eyes burning into hers, he declares he sees a queen. He sees the woman who walked into a lion's den and refused to break. Bridget's breath shatters as tears blur her vision. The primal possessiveness in his deep voice is terrifying, yet intoxicating. She is no longer just a ghost with a mop. She is the steady anchor keeping a dangerous man tethered to the earth. Remember, real courage always earns its crown. She reaches out, trembling fingers sinking into his dark hair. The beast surrenders, leaning into her fragile touch. Here is a lethal man finding peace with the woman the world tossed aside. But do not get comfortable. That sanctuary shatters the next morning. Bridget is in the hallway, pushing her mop, when Dr. Pendleton bursts from the master's suite. His arrogant swagger is gone. His face is ghost white, hands shaking as he dials his phone. Bridget's instincts kick in. She ducks behind a cold marble pillar, holding her breath to listen. She hears Pendleton hiss into the receiver, his voice tight with raw panic. He warns Vincent they have a massive problem. Their dark secret is bleeding into the light. Never forget, in a house built on betrayal, peace is always the first casualty. You and I are going to watch this nightmare unravel together. Pendleton, the morally bankrupt doctor, is sweating bullets on the phone with Vincent, the backstabbing cousin. Pendleton just ran the Don's blood work, and the impossible happened. The paralytic poison is failing. It is washing right out of Dominic's system. Pendleton is frantic, whining that it makes zero sense because nobody but the invisible cleaning staff ever sets foot in that room. Cornered rats always bite, so they make a lethal choice. Tonight, Pendleton will hit Dominic with a massive dose of potassium chloride to fake a sudden heart attack. Here is a vital lesson for you. If you decide to bury a king, you better make sure your dirt is heavy enough to keep him down. Otherwise, the open grave belongs to you. Hidden in the shadows, Bridget listens as her blood turns to ice. They are going to execute Dominic tonight. The countdown has begun. She waits agonizing seconds for the corrupt doctor to leave. Once he vanishes, she bolts, throwing herself into the master bedroom and slamming the locks. And there he is. Dominic is out of bed, muscles straining as he grinds out brutal push-ups against the mattress, reclaiming his strength. He sees her terrified face, and the ruthless Don instantly returns. He demands to know what is wrong. Gasping for air, she reveals the illusion is over. The doctor knows he is healing, and the lethal injection comes tonight. Listen closely. Never wait for the dark storm to break before you finally decide to reinforce your walls. When Bridget explains the needle means a fatal heart attack, you see the violent storm gather in Dominic's eyes. But this cold resilience is exactly why he wears the crown. He does not panic. His mind goes straight to brutal mathematics. He confesses he has the grip to fire a weapon, but tearing through 30 armed mercenaries? Impossible. He needs his loyal men on the outside, the ones untouched by Vincent's treason. But his cousin stole his phone. Then a dark smirk cuts across Dominic's face. He reveals a masterstroke, an encrypted satellite phone, and a black book buried in a hidden floor safe inside his old office. Take this deeply to heart. Always bury a silent backup plan in the shadows where your arrogant enemies would never think to dig. The nightmare tightens its grip. Vincent claimed that exact office as his trophy room. Dominic explains that with that satellite phone, he can summon a strike team to bathe Vincent's crew in fire. But the catch is suicidal. The office sits on the guarded first floor, where Vincent is hosting a high-stakes dinner with union bosses. Dominic grips Bridget's arms, his fingers like iron, anchoring his intense stare into her soul. He needs her to walk into hell, crack the safe, and return before the Reaper arrives with a syringe. Bridget is trembling, begging to know how a maid sneaks past mob enforcers. His answer is chillingly simple. She is a ghost. The profound truth here? The exact trait that makes you invisible to a judging world can suddenly become your most lethal superpower. Dominic pours dark, street-forged wisdom into her mind. He tells her to grip her cart, bleed into the shadows, and weaponize their blind arrogance. He whispers a 6-digit code, mapping out the false floorboard under a Persian rug beneath his old desk. Stripping away his armor, he confesses his very life now rests in her hands. Bridget stares at this terrifying Don, the only man who ever treated her like a queen. She swallows her paralyzing fear and nods. She will risk it all. We cut to the evening hours. The mansion hums with danger. Vincent is downstairs playing king, drinking with corrupt union leaders. Remember this well. True loyalty is never bought with cheap words. It is only forged in fire when everything is on the line. The air reeks of expensive cigars and stolen authority. Bridget grips her squeaky cart, inching down the corridor. Her drab grey uniform feels like a pathetic shield, yet simultaneously a screaming bullseye. Her heart beats with such violent force she fears the armed hitmen will hear it. Up ahead, two massive guards block the dining room. But Dominic's prophecy holds true. Their eyes slide right over her like she is just dust on the floor. She drifts past their lethal gaze, fading into the east wing where Vincent claimed the Don's study. The shadowy hall is empty. She pushes the heavy oak door and slips into the belly of the beast. Always remember, a man's suffocating arrogance will blind him to the quiet threat standing right in front of his face. You step into that stolen office and it radiates disrespect. Vincent replaced Dominic's quiet elegance with flashy garbage. Bridget drops hard to her knees beside the massive desk, ignoring the sharp pain in her tired joints. She shoves back the Persian rug, desperate fingers scrambling across the hardwood until they catch a microscopic flaw. The hidden seam. She presses down, and with a soft whir, a glowing keypad rises from the wood. Her hands tremble violently, nearly slipping on the keys as she types 472911. The truth hidden in this room is profound. Loud, flashy confidence is nothing but a fragile mask. Real, undeniable power stays quietly buried beneath the floorboards, just waiting for the right moment to strike. A hollow click cuts through the dead silence. Bridget pulls the floorboard away, revealing the Don's buried treasure, a leather ledger, and a bulky satellite phone. She snatches the device, shoving it deep inside the loose layers of her uniform. Her uncelebrated frame provides the perfect camouflage for a warlord's weapon. She reaches to fix the rug when a sound stops her dead, the thud of heavy shoes marching down the hall. It is Vincent. His arrogant voice booms, barking that he left his contracts on the desk. Freezing panic wraps its hands around Bridget's throat. She scrambles to her feet, heart exploding against her ribs. Listen closely. True survival is not about moving perfectly through the dark. It is about how quickly you adapt the very second the trap snaps shut. Bridget's survival instinct takes over. She snatches her spray bottle and a rag, spinning to scrub the windows, just as the heavy door swings wide. Vincent strides in, shadowed by a wall of muscle. He stops dead. His cold eyes lock onto Bridget, staring a hole through her for 3 agonizing seconds. The silence stretches, thick and venomous. Bridget clenches the plastic bottle, feeling the hard weight of the Don's satellite phone pressing against her ribs. Vincent's lip curls in disgust as he barks, demanding to know what a lowly maid is doing in his sanctuary. Instantly, she shrinks her shoulders, pulling the mask of a terrified, clueless worker over her face. A vital lesson. When a predator finally bares its teeth, sometimes the absolute smartest defense is to play the fool. The air is thick with danger as Bridget forces her voice into a high, trembling pitch, playing the perfect, helpless cleaner. She stammers out apologies, claiming the housekeeper sent her. Vincent glares at her shivering frame and damp, messy hair. There is a brief flicker of suspicion, but it instantly dissolves into arrogant disgust. He cruelly calls her a sweating pig, barking at her to leave before she ruins the air in his pristine office. Bridget keeps her eyes glued to the floor, murmuring her apologies as she retreats. The tragedy of arrogance is always the same. We let our egos paint a false picture of the world, and that very pride will blind us completely to the quiet threat standing right in front of us. Every single step she takes toward that squeaky cart feels like wading through wet cement. Her heart is a frantic drum in her chest. If Vincent had just looked closer, if he had noticed the unnatural weight hidden beneath her uniform, She would be a ghost right now. Jimmy, the heavy muscle, tracks her with hollow, dead eyes as she pushes into the corridor. The heavy door clicks shut, and the absolute weight of her survival crushes her. Bridget collapses against the cold metal cart, gasping for air in the dim hallway. She walked through the fire and made it out alive. It leaves us with a quiet lesson for our own lives. Always stay humble, because the people you choose to look down upon might just be the ones holding your fate in their hands. The silence of being invisible just bought her a second chance at life, and now time is slipping away fast. She abandons all caution, throwing herself into the service elevator and punching the button for the third floor. It is 8:45 at night. The shadow of the Reaper is already at the front gate. She ditches the cart and sprints into the master suite. There he is. Dominic sits upright, fully dressed in stolen black slacks and a dark shirt. He looks hollowed out, starved, but terrifyingly absolute. The fallen king is ready for war. He demands the prize, and she pulls the heavy black phone from her pocket. Life teaches us this simple reality time and time again. When you know the storm is finally breaking, you better be standing ready. The look that crosses Dominic's face is pure, unfiltered nightmare. It is the cold, terrifying smile of an apex predator who finally has his prey trapped. The phone illuminates the dark room, fully charged and untraceable. His eyes blaze with a violent, unhinged respect as he tells Bridget she actually pulled it off. He promises her a front row seat to the complete obliteration of his traitorous bloodline. He dials a number locked deep in his memory, and when a voice answers, Dominic speaks with the chilling authority of the true Don. He says, "It is Dom, gather the strike team." The bitter lesson woven into this moment is undeniable. Vengeance is a poison best served ice cold, striking fast and leaving absolutely no room for mercy. Stick with me here, because this is where the tectonic plates of their world completely shift. Dominic is dropping the absolute coldest orders into that receiver. He tells Carlo, his oldest loyalist, that his cousin Vincent is a snake and the doctor is a dead man walking. He wants them both flatlined within the hour. You can hear Carlo gasp through the speaker, but Dominic just growls that he is awake and taking his empire back. He drops the phone and rises. His muscles tremble from the atrophy, yet he plants his feet like a massive 6-foot-plus titan. Bridget watches, paralyzed, as this intimidating shadow engulfs the room. He pulls a heavy 1911 pistol and racks the slide. Let this remind you, never count a true survivor out until the dirt is over them. That harsh, metallic clack of the slide echoes through the bedroom like a tolling bell for the damned. Out in the hall, heavy footsteps approach, accompanied by the dreadful squeal of a medical cart. Bridget's eyes widen with sheer, unadulterated terror as she whispers the doctor's name. Dominic locks onto the heavy oak doors with the piercing gaze of a hunting hawk. Leveling the pistol dead center, he orders Bridget into the shadows. She scrambles into the bathroom alcove, her chest heaving with silent sobs. The brass doorknob slowly turns, and Dr. Pendleton steps inside, utterly blind to his doom, holding a syringe full of lethal poison. We see it so often in life. The exact moment you believe you have won is usually when fate arrives to collect its debt. Pendleton pushes his cart forward, muttering complaints to himself, completely detached from the horrible crime he is about to commit. He lets out a sick, arrogant sigh, whispering that it is time to end the charade. But his eyes find the bed, and the mattress is totally empty. Before his brain can even process the impossible, a massive hand erupts from the darkness and closes around his windpipe. Dominic lifts the man off his feet, slamming him violently against the pristine wall. The deadly syringe scatters across the Persian rug. Pendleton's eyes bulge with absolute horror, staring at the ghost he came to kill. Dominic whispers hello and presses the steel barrel to his temple. The lesson is written in blood. Arrogance will always dig your final grave. The Don leans in close, his voice a gravelly whisper, telling the doctor he heard he was searching for a permanent cure. The absolute malice radiating from Dominic is heavy enough to crush bone. Pendleton dangles helplessly, his expensive leather shoes kicking at nothing but empty space. He chokes out pathetic excuses, his face flushing a deep, bruised purple. He cries that Vincent forced his hand, for begging for sympathy like a cornered rat. But Dominic's grey eyes are devoid of anything human. He lowers the doctor just enough to scrape the floor, driving that 1911 barrel so hard against his temple that it breaks the skin. Remember this harsh truth. Victim playing this helpless victim will never erase the choices you willingly made. A single dark drop of blood traces a path down the doctor's terrified face. Dominic strips away every illusion, his voice vibrating with raw fury as he minutely details the betrayal. He calls Arthur out by name. I'm furious that the man watched him rot paralyzed, laughing with the cousin who ordered the hit. Pendleton is practically foaming at the mouth now, sobbing, offering offshore accounts and endless cash to buy his miserable life. Dominic just gifts him a cruel, hollow smile. He whispers that he does not want his money, he only wants his prescribed medicine. With a sickening crunch, Dominic kicks the man's knees out, dropping him hard to the floor. The lesson echoes loudly here. True integrity is priceless, and no amount of wealth can ever buy back a broken soul. With the heavy pistol still locked on the doctor's forehead, Dominic bends down, retrieves the lethal syringe, and tosses it onto the traitor's chest. The command is chillingly simple. Take it. Pendleton stares at his own poison, screaming that it will stop his heart in mere seconds. But Dominic is a glacier, offering a terrible choice. Push the plunger, or take a bullet to the stomach and spend 3 agonizing hours bleeding out. The countdown begins. 1. Pendleton wails, begging the heavens for mercy. 2. Dominic's finger tightens on the trigger. The doctor's hands shake violently around the plastic tube. It is a terrifying lesson to learn. The malice you prepare for someone else will eventually land squarely on your own chest. Listen closely to how this ends, because it reveals the absolute core of who they are. Pendleton searches the Don's eyes for a shred of pity, finding only an endless, unforgiving dark. With a broken cry, he drives the needle into his thigh and pushes. Dominic steps back, watching the violent end. 5 seconds later, the doctor seizes against the marble trim and is gone. Bridget is plastered against the bathroom wall, violently trembling, her hands clamped hard over her mouth to trap her screams. She has never seen life extinguished so brutally. But then, the monster vanishes. Dominic walks over, the malice draining away, and gently pulls her trembling hands from her face. Let this sink in. True strength is knowing when to be a monster and when to be human. Dominic brushes tear from her cheek, his deep voice commanding her to look up. He tells her his world is built entirely on blood, but promises she is completely safe. He swears he will burn the city to ash before letting this darkness touch her. Before she can process his vow, a muffled thump echoes from below. Shattering glass. A suppressed gunshot. Dominic's eyes harden instantly. Carlo is in the building. He grabs spare magazines from the nightstand, slipping them into his pockets, and checks his chamber. He takes her trembling hand, whispering that they belong to the shadows now. Listen to me tonight. Surround yourself with people who will gladly go to war for you. but always be ready to act as their shield when the bullets finally start flying. His hand wraps around hers, a heavy anchor steadying her against a hurricane of pure violence. They slip from the master suite into the dark third-floor hallway. Tonight, you and I are watching a palace of velvet and gold turn into a war zone. Down below, the symphony of chaos is deafening. Panicked men scream, bodies thud heavily against imported marble, and suppressed gunfire coughs through the air. Carlo and his loyal strike team move like phantoms, clearing the estate with terrifying, surgical precision. Dominic and Bridget push forward until they reach the grand mahogany staircase. Look at this and remember one simple life lesson. Peace is just a fragile pane of glass, and when it shatters, you better have absolute, blind loyalty standing by your side to protect you. Down in the shadows of the foyer, 3 traitorous guards bleed out on the marble. 2 of Carlo and his men sweep the lower floor. Suddenly, an enforcer looks up at the staircase and freezes entirely. He lowers his weapon, tapping his earpiece with trembling fingers to whisper that the Don is secure and actually walking. Dominic descends those stairs like a resurrected king, his massive frame shielding Bridget. His voice is a low thunder as he demands to know where his cousin is hiding. Carlo steps from the kitchen, scarred and heavily armed, pointing toward the dining room. There is a heavy life lesson to carry with you here. True authority never has to scream for attention. People will naturally follow you because of the undeniable weight of who you really are. Carlo looks at Dominic, then at the terrified cleaning woman holding his hand. He asks no questions, offering a slow professional nod. He murmurs that the room is surrounded, and the corrupt union bosses are trapped inside. Dominic lets his voice drop into a lethal growl, swearing that nobody touches Vincent but him. He releases Bridget, ordering her to stay back, but she refuses to hide. Running on pure adrenaline, she shakes her head, telling this terrifying man she will not let him out of her sight in case he collapses. Carlo raises an eyebrow at audacity, but Dominic gives her a dark, captivated smirk. Keep this simple life lesson in mind. True courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to stand your ground even when your knees are trembling. Dominic leans in, whispering that if he collapses, she can drag him the rest of the way. He warns her to stay close. They approach the massive oak dining doors. Dominic does not even reach for the handles. He drives his heavy boot into the wood with terrifying force. The brass latch shatters, and the doors explode open with the deafening roar of a detonated bomb. Inside that room, time simply dies. Vincent is sitting at the head of the table like a pathetic, fake king, a crystal glass of scotch frozen halfway to his lips. 5 corrupt underworld figures stare in absolute horror. Remember this crucial life lesson. Sometimes you cannot just knock politely on the doors of life. You have to kick them off their hinges and demand the respect you truly deserve. The table is a graveyard of sticks, lobster shells, and shady contracts. You and I can look at this and know the easy ride is over. When Vincent sees his cousin, the color drains from his skin. He looks exactly like a man watching a ghost crawl out of the damp earth. His fingers go numb, and his glass shatters against the floor, spilling scotch onto the rug. Dominic steps into the chandelier light, radiating a dark, suffocating power. He casually wishes them a good evening, asking if he ruined their dessert. The 1911 pistol hangs at his side, while Carlo and 4 enforcers fan out like silent executioners. Keep this simple life lesson close to your heart. You can enjoy the stolen feast for a while, but when the bill finally arrives, you will have to pay for everything you greedily took. Stick with me because we are about to watch the heavy price of betrayal. Bridget presses against the velvet curtains, watching the king of the underworld reclaim his throne. Vincent is practically weeping, throwing his hands up like a complete coward. He stammers out excuses, crying that a doctor said Dom was dying and he only wanted to protect their legacy. What a pathetic lie. Dominic steps closer, every footstep echoing like an executioner's axe. He drops a crushing truth. Legacy? Vincent was selling docs to the Russian mob and paying $10,000 a week to pump literal rat poison into his cousin's veins. Hear this simple life lesson clearly. Never drive a knife into the back of your own blood, because the brutal truth will always hunt you down and expose your darkest sins. The corrupt union bosses are losing their minds. Hoffman sweats heavily, swearing they thought Dominic was terminal. Without looking away from his cousin, Dominic promises to cut out Hoffman's tongue if he speaks again. In seconds, Vincent's arrogant swagger evaporates. He drops to his knees on the ruined carpet, sobbing like a terrified child. He begs for mercy, crying about how they are blood, confessing his bitter jealousy. He just wanted a little taste of the city's respect. Dominic looms over this cowering snake and delivers a crushing truth. Respect is earned, not stolen. Remember this simple life lesson. You can never demand people to respect you. You must put in the agonizing, heavy work to actually build that loyalty yourself. Dominic coldly tells his cousin that respect is never stolen while a man is trapped in a paralyzed body. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room shatters. A massive union boss tied to the Russian mob realizes the Don will not leave any loose ends alive tonight. Desperation sets in, and he reaches into his jacket for a hidden revolver. But Bridget is watching from the shadows like a hawk. She catches the unnatural twitch of his shoulder. She does not freeze. Running on the fierce adrenaline of a woman protecting the man who truly sees her, she screams for Dominic to watch his left and lunges into the line of fire. Take this vital life lesson to heart. True loyalty is not just smiling when the shining. It is bravely stepping into the crossfire when things turn violently dangerous. Bridget throws her weight against a heavy brass serving cart loaded with silver dishes. It accelerates like a freight train, violently smashing into the union boss just as he pulls his revolver. The sickening crunch of his ribs echoes as boiling gravy dumps onto his lap. The man shrieks in agony, his aim thrown off as a stray bullet blasts the crystal chandelier above. Shards of glass rain down. You and I know a normal man would have ducked, but Dominic does not even blink. He pivots on his heel, raises his weapon in a blinding flash, and drops the traitor with one perfect shot between the eyes. The man slumps over the ruined feast, finished. Keep this simple life lesson in mind. Thinking fast on your feet and using the tools you have will always defeat mindless, brute strength. Chaos erupts, but the enforcers violently shove the union bosses face down, jamming cold rifles into their expensive suits. Dominic turns his deadly focus back to Vincent, who is trembling like a short-circuiting machine. Then his dark eyes drift to Bridget. She breathes heavily, clutching her bruised shoulder, but she stands incredibly tall. She is a fierce warrior disguised in a faded gray cleaning apron. A look of intense, protective devotion washes over Dominic's face. He gestures toward Bridget and asks his pathetic cousin if he truly sees her now, reminding Vincent that he treated this woman like absolute garbage. Keep this simple life lesson close. Never underestimate the quiet people working in the shadows, because their hidden strength will eventually bring you to your knees. Dominic tears his cousin apart, his voice dripping with venom. He points out that Vincent treated Bridget like a ghost. This arrogant fool let her walk past him while planning a murder, simply because a maid did not fit his shallow worldview. Vincent stares at Bridget in terror, crying that she is just a cleaning lady. Dominic coldly corrects him. She is the genius who decoded the poison plot. She smuggled the cure into his guarded room and stole his burner phone. Vincent's jaw unhinges. The brutal realization that his Mafia takeover was destroyed by the cleaning staff he mocked completely shatters his mind. He lets out a broken, hysterical laugh. Learn this vital life lesson today. Pure arrogance will always make you blind to the truly powerful people standing right in front of your face. Dominic stands tall, declaring that Bridget saved his life, meaning his entire empire now belongs to her. The beautiful kicker, she really does not like his cousin, Vincent. Dominic slowly cocks the hammer as Vincent drops to his knees, begging for mercy. A single, deafening gunshot shatters the room. Vincent collapses onto the expensive Persian rug, his betrayal washing away in spilled whiskey. The false king is dead, and the true boss has returned. Dominic lowers the smoking weapon without a single glance at the crying men on the floor. He steps right over shattered glass, walking straight to Bridget. The most terrifying man in New York drops his gun and pulls her tight against his chest. Here is your final lesson, friends. True gratitude is fiercely valuing the one who had your back when you were at your absolute lowest point. Dominic leans in, whispering against her neck that she is terrifyingly brilliant, ignoring the armed mobsters watching them. Fast forward 6 months. The syndicate is stronger, paranoid, and deadlier than anyone remembers. The real shock for the criminal elite is not just that Dominic clawed his way back from the grave. It is the absolute queen sitting beside him in this guarded dining room. Bridget wears a custom emerald silk gown adorned with flawless diamonds. That exhausted cleaning lady has vanished entirely. In her place sits a fierce woman who knows the exact weight of her dark power. Today, you and I can take away a beautiful truth from this. Never let a simple job title dictate your worth, because your true potential is always vastly larger than what people see on the surface. Across the table, Dominic looks immaculate in a crisp black tuxedo. His strength is fully restored. Those icy eyes that make the city tremble grow incredibly soft and obsessed the second they land on Bridget. She catches his gaze, offering a knowing smirk as she sips her heavy red wine, teasingly telling him to stop staring. Dominic leans closer, his voice smooth, confessing he is simply admiring his empire. Bridget does not miss a beat, hitting him with brilliant advice. She warns him to ensure the dock workers get their pensions funded. If you starve the people at the bottom, they will eventually burn your house down. The lesson here is profound. True leadership always demands taking care of your everyday workers, because they are the quiet, sturdy foundation holding up your entire world. Dominic flashes a slow, predatory smile, loving that her brilliant mind is now his most lethal weapon. Calling her his queen, he agrees to follow her lead. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors swing open, shattering the quiet. Carlo walks in alongside Sal the Snake, a sleazy rival boss here to settle a bitter turf war. Sal struts into the room reeking of cheap cologne. He offers Dominic a forced nod, but his shady eyes lock onto Bridget. An ugly flash of pure disgust twists his features. Sal is used to men parading around with empty trophies, not a fiercely confident woman claiming her seat at the top of the food chain. Here is a crucial lesson. Never judge a person based purely on appearances, because real, authentic power does not care about fitting into shallow societal stereotypes. Sal lets out a greasy chuckle, asking Dominic why they are eating with the hired help. You and I know exactly what happens next. The room's temperature plummets to absolute zero. Bridget does not blink. She calmly sets down her wine, locking dead-eye contact with the snake. Dominic does not raise his voice. He stands up with a terrifying calm, walking slowly around the table to stop behind Sal. Before this foolish rival processes his mistake, Dominic grips the back of his neck. With zero hesitation, he violently slams Sal's face straight into the solid mahogany table. Plates shatter, and Sal screams as his nose breaks with a sickening crunch. The lesson here is brutally obvious. Keep your disrespect in check when standing in someone else's house, or you will pay a deeply painful price. Dominic pins the bleeding mobster against the wood, leaning down into his ear. His whisper vibrates with dark, possessive rage. He tells Sal he is lucky to even breathe her air. He reminds this coward that Bridget pulled him from an early grave, while snakes like Sal dug the hole. Dominic promises to take his eyes if he ever disrespects her again. And that disputed Tribeca territory? It belongs to his wife. Now, Sal scrambles up, clutching his ruined face, and bolts out the doors. The brutal violence exploded and vanished in under 60 seconds. Dominic turns back to his queen, chest heaving, his eyes pitch black with adrenaline. The life lesson here is crystal clear. A genuinely loyal partner will fiercely defend your honor in public without a single second of hesitation. Dominic walks back to her side. The monster recedes as he takes her hand, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles, apologizing for the mess. Bridget looks at the blood on the table, then up at this terrifying kingpin who worships the ground she walks on. She reaches up, tracing his jawline. Stick with me here, because the contrast is stunning. 6 months ago, she walked into a lion's den expecting the worst. Instead, she tamed the beast. She smiles with dark authority, whispering that it is fine, because she knows exactly how to clean up a spill. The invisible cleaning lady did not just survive the underworld, she entirely conquered it. The final lesson is immense. Never let anyone make you feel small, because the person sweeping the floors today can rule the entire empire tomorrow. Bridget proved that untouchable power does not come from fitting into society's shallow molds. It comes from having the courage to step out of the shadows and take what belongs to you. On the flip side, Dominic learned that the most lethal weapon in his arsenal was never a loaded firearm. It was the fearless queen who now rules both his ruthless heart and his criminal empire. Looking back to that hospital room, you and I both knew this revenge tour was going to be legendary. The second he made that promise, those traitors never even saw her coming. If you found yourself captivated by Bridget's dark rise from an overlooked cleaning lady to the absolute boss of the New York Mafia, make sure you stay with us. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next midnight chapter.